Okay, so welcome everyone. It is 8:17, so we're now going to begin our first Cemetery Dance into the Abyss movie watch. Just some brief introductions. My name is Kevin Lucia. I'm a writer. I'm also the paperback and ebook editor at Cemetery Dance Publications. Chuck, why don't you introduce yourself?
And I'm not. No, I'm Chuck. I'm C.W. Breyer. I'm also a horror author and fellow lover of booze.
The important part.
Yeah.
Tom?
You're making me do this.
Yes,
I'm Tom McDonough. I'm not a writer.
But he's still okay. Tom is actually one of my fellow teachers at Seton Catholic Central High School, and he is a horror aficionado.
This is Gideon.
Yeah, that's Gideon.
Yes,
obviously, the real star of the show is Gideon. So, Michael, do you want to introduce yourself? Even though everyone, this is being recorded, though, so it'll go on the YouTube channel too. Do you want to introduce yourself to everyone? Am I muted again?
Maybe.
I hope not. If I'm muted, then they're all like, "Why is he talking?" No, I'm not muted. So.
Oh, we can't make one.
Oh, Mike can't make his mic work. Okay, so we'll this was our first time doing this kind of like this. So
well, at this point, we're all familiar with
Puppies Exploring.
Yeah.
So Michael Aronovitz, this is it's a kind of a release party. There it is.
Video.
Hey, can you hear me?
We can, yes. Good.
Hey, man, I'm on.
So, Mike, why don't you introduce yourselves for everyone who will be watching this later on YouTube?
Yeah, sure. My name is Mike Aronovitz. I'm lucky enough to have been published by Cemetery Dance twice. They picked up the electronic rights to my first novel, Alice Walks, and they took on my pandemic project, which was making my short stories that I've written over a 30-year period, some even half a year ago. I overhauled them all and made them as perfect as I could and made the collection Dancing with Tombstones. And I've been working with them ever since. It came out in October in paperback, and soon it's going to be available in the electronic version.
Actually,
and Kevin,
the 99-cent pre-order special price went live today. So this will be posted on YouTube, by Monday or Tuesday. So that pre-order price will be up for the next couple weeks or so. So you want to take advantage of that while you can. So yeah. So again, welcome to everyone. A little bit about ourselves, just because this is going to be going to not only Into the Abyss YouTube channel, but it'll also go on the Cemetery Dance YouTube channel. Into the Abyss is a fledgling YouTube channel. We've only been around for 2 years now. Have we hit our 2-year anniversary yet?
About that.
Yeah. Basically, our motto is eat, drink, and be scary. So we watch lots of horror, we eat food, and we drink booze, and we talk about it.
I see Maria says that all the story tales in the collection are incredible and 10 out of 10.
Yes, yeah, excellent collection, as you would expect. So that's Into the Abyss. And what we're going to do tonight is we're going to watch a movie. We will let the sometimes capricious wheel of fate will choose what movie we watch tonight. But before we begin, we always like to do a little introductory segment about some of the horror things that are on the horizon that we're excited about. We also eat, drink, and be scary. We like to share our favorite libations that we've brought to enjoy. Libations. Didn't I say
libations? One
like good vibrations, good vibrations. Okay. Why don't we start with Chuck as far as a horror? It's early yet. It's not even 8:30. You're already. So Chuck, why don't you share any horror properties out there you've seen that you're looking forward to?
Well, I will say I just watched one I highly enjoyed. I mentioned before The Promised Neverland when I talked about anime on Into the Abyss, and I had not watched it at that point. It's fantastic. From what I hear, there's a season 1, and we don't talk about season 2. Everyone who was a fan hated season 2. But the premise is wonderful. It's an anime, and most of the characters are kids growing up in an orphanage, and they're not allowed to leave the property. And the kids are a little older, trying to figure out why they can't leave the property, and they start to figure out what is actually going on and why they exist in that orphanage and what their real destination is. So they wonderfully dark story, and very well done. A lot of head games going on back and forth between the difference of the kids and the mother. And actually, I'll mention one more. Nightmare Alley. I have not seen it yet. I want to go out and catch it. That's the new gothic movie from Guillermo del Toro, and looking forward to seeing that.
Tom, what are you looking for on the horror horizon?
Well, it was so funny because I just saw the ad for it today. It's not until January 28th on Netflix. A series called, I think it's a series. I haven't really even checked. We Are All Dead. It is dealing yet again with Korean zombie horror. Now, I have gotten...
kind of like a niche thing for you.
I know. I mean, it's funny because I actually watched The Silent Sea, and that was like a sci-fi horror movie.
How was it?
It was good and got a little goofy near the end, but it was good, I think. I like the idea of being on this moon base and water kills you.
It looked good. The trailer looked really good.
No, but in this one, it was kind of funny because I think there's a little bit of comedy because they said, it's trained in Busan in our high school. So, it is a niche thing. I am really getting into Korean horror because they do such a good job with it.
There you go.
Well, I did watch Antlers finally.
Oh, you can share that review with me.
Oh, okay.
Or you can share that.
Kevin just says, yeah, you can't do it all. It's all about me. It's all about the loosh.
It's still there. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I saw it. I know Chuck.
I was going to change that. I just didn't feel like getting up again.
Yeah. No, it was good. I was talking to Chuck about it, how I like the depressed mining town pushed to great lengths to make money, and then just an evil overtakes them all. It was good. I thought it was good. I just felt so bad. It was pushed so far back because of COVID.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Monster design was very well done.
Oh, yeah, it was.
So, a couple things I'm looking forward to is Studio 66, horror movie starring the Foo Fighters. I think it looks like a fun movie, you know. And I was reading an article about it, and apparently Dave Grohl is a huge horror fan. You know, so that's something I'm definitely interested in seeing. Black Telephone starring Ethan Hawke, based on a short story by Joe Hill. That looks like it's going to be really good. I feel like there was The Man. Can we just like wax poetic Mike Flanagan for a minute? Mike Flanagan. Oh, did we ever do a review of Midnight Mass? Because we were waiting until you finished it.
I watched it.
Did you watch it yet?
No, but I'm open to listening.
Okay. So his next. So get this. First of all,
say what he's done. He's on Netflix.
Well, he's done. Mike Flanagan has done The Haunting of Hill House, which was just amazing the way he took the elements of the novel, and it's like he just completely. It's like he took all the elements of the novel and put it in a blender and made his own thing. And it's just wonderful, absolutely wonderful. The Haunting of Bly Manor is good. It's not quite as gripping. Marina, then you're going to want to pay attention to you're going to want to hear our review halfway through because we've got two avid fans of that movie sitting here. Yeah. But The Haunting of Bly Manor was good. It didn't quite have the sting that The Haunting of Hill House had, but that's because it was a gothic romance. It wasn't really an American horror story. It was a gothic romance. He did a wonderful job with Dr. Sleep. Mm-hmm. Like how do you make a sequel to a book and a movie that were completely different, yet somehow incorporate the miniseries? I mean, it's three different Shinings.
I think Dr. Sleep was one of the best movie interpretations of Stephen King ever.
Absolutely. And he's done a lot of other good stuff, too. His newest project is The Fall of the House. Upcoming. The Fall of the House of Usher, a reinterpretation of that and several other works of Edgar Allan Poe. Again, compiling everything. He's also cast Mark Hamill.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Mark Hamill, which I gotta be honest with you, I think if there's one of the most glaring things with The Last Jedi, if we can swerve over into sci-fi a little bit, is realizing that Mark Hamill really can act. Mm-hmm. And then now you're wondering all these years about the rumor was George Lucas was just not a good director of people. So I'm actually really excited.
See, Maria's comment. Haunting of Hill House is still my favorite, though. Steve Crane does not get the love he deserves.
Oh yeah, that was that's like an annual rewatch. That is, and it's not. As far as novels on the upcoming Horizon, Christy Demeester's newest just came out. It's her Pretty Little Smile. Is that what it's called? Yeah, Christy Demeester. If you haven't read anything by her, oh my gosh, her connection, her novel Beneath is one of the most gut-wrenchingly despair-filled novel. I loved every minute of it. Absolutely loved it. Yeah.
So I did see, this is more news than upcoming releases. They put out the Bram Stoker Award. Not finalists. I tried to think.
Preliminary ballot
Award
today. Yeah.
And I see that one of Kevin's most beloved authors made the cut for a Bram Stoker long fiction. You haven't heard?
No, I didn't.
Chuck Tingle.
Oh my God!
With his story straight, it is not Dinosaur Saga.
No, I heard he was going to write a straight horror story. That's what I heard. So if any of you,
Mike, the Wolfman pounds me in the butt.
Mike, are you familiar with a phenomenon that is known as Chuck Tingle?
No, tell me.
Okay, so at some point,
just Google it and just all the book covers. And
go to Google image search and Google Chuck Tingle, and you will be introduced to the phenomenon that is known as Chuck Tingle.
And some of the timely titles, they come out within days of the news event.
My favorite Chuck Tingle title is Taken by the Saber-Toothed Dentist, who is also a ghost. So he's got a whole series of books called Pounded in the Butt. What was the one? Donald Trump pounded in the butt by my wiretapping scandal. My favorite is that someone had the audacity to nominate one of his short stories for a Hugo Award.
Yeah. And then nominated twice.
And then when he lost, the very next day, literally the next day, he had a new release. The cover is the Hugo Award with his pervy face pasted on it, and the title is "Pounded in the Butt by My Hugo Award Loss." I will have to say this though: Chuck Tingle is extremely popular because he has a very broad-based, inclusive persona. He's very kind. I've heard stories. I don't know if it's true. We don't know what he looks like. We don't know who he is. I've heard stories that he's an adult who has learned to live with his autism by writing these absurd stories.
I've actually never read the stories, but I've heard from some people that you can tell he can actually write. Like, he does these silly things.
It's not erotica. Like, for example, I
write.
don't have the feeling that you're going to get hot and bothered by reading a Chuck Tingle novel. I had one of my.
Unless you're into homoerotica bestiality.
I made the mistake of mentioning him to one of my creative writing students one year, and they downloaded a sample. And at one point in the sample, one of the main characters was a sentient chocolate milkshake who was also the town sheriff. So I don't think it's really. It's got all these outlandish names, but I don't think what you're doing.
Do you think you used to work for Don't Hug Me on Stairs back
Oh, and I see you, Marina. We Can Never Leave This Place by Eric. I've heard very good things about that as well.
What about Mike? Does he have anything he's looking forward to?
So turn over to you, Mike. Is there anything on the horror horizon that you've been, looking forward to that you've got your eye on?
Oh, me? I'm sorry. I look forward to anything by Stephen King, and also I write rock reviews for Metalheads Forever and a couple of metal magazines. So I know this seems like it doesn't relate, but the latest thing that I've seen that has a horror element is a band out of Mexico. It's three sisters. They're called The Warning, and they hooked up with an anime person. And they did a song called Animosity, the Grim Reaper. And on a very childlike level, it's sort of horror, but the song fucking rocks.
Cool. Very cool. All right. So shall we get into our? Okay. So here's what we're gonna do.
We're gonna do libations first.
Oh yeah, I forgot libations. We did our libations. So food and community and alcohol is also a big part of Into the Abyss. Anyone who's watched our show will puppy's back. Anyone who's watched our show will see that as the night goes on, and
you may see a very
he's going for the wire.
Yeah, you may see a very large puppy running in here at some point.
Chuck, you may want to get him away from that, or the laptop is going to go crashing to the ground. Yes, if you go check out our, we'll repost the link in the chat. But if you go check out Into the Abyss and follow us, you will see that a lot of times as the night wanes on, I would highly recommend checking out our review of the Abyss or the Lighthouse.
Yeah.
We had rather strident differences of it. So what
I was off my meds. Give me a break.
So what are we drinking tonight, guys?
Well, I actually pillaged. Kevin, I think you brought this.
Nope, that's Tom.
The Tom is.
Yep.
So 2 Trees flavored whiskey. The flavor is scorched brown sugar, and Kevin brought creme brulee. It's a whiskey cream liqueur, and I was going to tell you what goes on in creme brulee. Scorched brown sugar. And it's a great combination. I'm very much enjoying that. Actually, I bought a bottle of this, the creme brulee whiskey cream liqueur, because everything Southern Tier Distilling puts out is amazing. I had some pumpkin, but I finished it. It was good, so I finished it.
Marina, but see, meanwhile, tomorrow you won't be doing what all 3 of us will be doing, and that will be something like this when we wake up. It'll be like, you won't be having that tomorrow. So, Tom, you brought the scorched brown sugar. What else are you drinking?
I also brought the Sam Adams, Christmas lager. It's kind of funny because I usually don't. I kind of really scale back on my beer drinking, but I love the Christmas drinks. I think everyone buys that stuff usually for Old Fezziwig more than anything else. And it's pretty good, but I'm trying to make a better palate, more sophisticated.
So Mike says he's sticking to just beer, no hard liquor.
The funny thing is Mike, I've done the opposite. So for years I was only beer, and I hadn't drank any liquor at all, especially because what would always happen with me, and this would always happen.
You would get married.
What's that?
You would get married after he gets drunk.
No. Like for example, I'd be hanging out with
Marina. This is for you. You keep going. This is for you.
Okay.
Want a little chaos out.
Oh, more. This is only one.
This is one puppy.
One of the puppies here. There are more. Like I'll be hanging out. I'm not bragging, but I'm sort of bragging. I'll be hanging out with Paul Wilson, Tom Montiello, and Stu David Schiff, and they'll be like, "Oh, here's my bottle of $200 cognac or my $200 scotch," and I'll be like, "I can't drink this. It tastes like gasoline." What I found, though, in my exploration of whiskey in the last couple of years is the super expensive whiskeys.
Oh, hi there.
Oh, no. The super expensive whiskeys. Who's
this,
really? This is Clover.
Hi, Clover.
She's almost 12 months old now.
Okay, so new strategy for the Abyss. No horror. Just puppies. Just videos of puppies.
This is the puppy
videos of puppies.
Into the Abyss.
So anyway, Michael, the funny thing is in my exploration of whiskey, I actually have done the reverse. I don't drink beer anymore because what I found is the sugar and the carbs in the beer make me feel funky the next morning. And I've also been working out, and I'm not saying that whiskey is healthy, but there's a little bit less in the whiskey than there is in the beer. But really the big thing was the beer was messing with my stomach. So I brought tonight, on recommendation of some good friends of mine.
Yes, there are 3 doggies. Kaiju is the adult corgi.
So I brought Jameson's whiskey stout edition. It was aged in stout barrels. And of course, I brought the Southern Tier creme brulee. And what that kind of creates is basically kind of like a boozy mocha frap. So, there are 3 doggies, Maria. Yeah. Yes, there are 3. Where's Kaiju?
He's over there.
Kaiju, come
Right there.
Well, he doesn't get up though. How are we just? Third dog coming. There's Kaiju.
There's Kaiju.
He's just
Chilling to the side. All right.
Ha-ha!
What is Mike's drink of choice? I know he said beer. What beer?
Mike, do you have a drink of choice that you have this evening?
My drink of choice is Stella Artois.
Ooh, right there.
Good choice. That is,
Good
if
stuff.
I were to drink a beer, that would be one of the ones I'd drink. That's one of the smooth. Yeah, there we go.
All right.
That's one of the smoother ones. All right, so let's move into our choices for the evening.
You're gonna have to go to your pen.
This is going to require a little screen sharing here,
You smell like dog.
which hopefully we will
Oh no, it's put it on.
avoid. We'll avoid infinity window like last time.
Oh.
All right. So these are. Can you guys all see that, Michael? Can you see that up on your screen?
I see it up in the top corner. I see myself as the big picture.
So you'll probably want to. Those of you guys that are at home, there's a toggle back and forth where you can toggle yours in the big screen and yourself in the big screen. So here's the 5 movies that I picked out. So we're going to take a look at these, and then we will let the Wheel of Fate decide.
I know you're seeing them ask for already.
No, because I found the last couple times I've asked for input is that they just took forever. So I figured I would just arbitrarily pick 5. And we'll just go from there. So let's see. Here's the first one. And I don't know if anyone's noticed, but I have been kind of on an 80s horror kick. So that's what we have here is 80s horror. Okay, so the first one is a movie called Grotesque. Oop, it's starting. Grotesque. Bloodthirsty punks massacre a family in their home, but the carnage isn't over because there's one family member they didn't count on. Starring Linda Blair.
Oh.
Sorry, Linda Blair. So
Tab Hunter?
I don't know who Tab Hunter is. Do you know?
No, it just seems like a weird name.
Tab Hunter. But Linda Blair. So maybe the Wheel of Fate will be kind to us. All right, let's look at the next one. I don't know. This has full moon vibes. So, full moon's good, man. Full moon put some good stuff out in their time. It is full moon. Look at that.
A trip to Italy.
Adam Ant. Starring Adam Ant. Richard Blade, Gail O'Grady.
Bunty Bailey.
Winning a trip to Italy proves to be the worst thing to ever happen to a group of young people as they're picked off one by one. Yeah, I was right. No, full moon. So have you ever seen, speaking of full moon, have you ever seen the Jack Death movies?
No.
That's it. Our next Into the Abyss, we're gonna have to do a Jack Death marathon. I can't believe. Let's show. Okay, so we'll wait till my house. We'll do a Jack Death marathon. I can't believe you guys have not seen that. He is like, it's amazing, but it's awful. Oops, sorry. The Vineyard. A wine grower obsessed with use lures young victims to his remote island with the twisted hope of retaining their effervescent energy. Effervescent energy. And then the next one, Don't Look in the Attic. I'm not sure what to think about this one.
Oh, another Italy.
3 relatives inherit
What's going on?
This one looks like it might be an Italian movie.
I think it is. Carlo Assisi.
Oh, a little bit of Italian horror.
Anna Rita Guapato. I'm pretty sure it's Italian.
3 relatives inherit a mansion in Turin, Italy. They soon learn it is haunted by murderous spirits.
Now, this last one was 1980, so I have high hopes for that.
Yes, the early 80s put out some good horror movies.
Ooh.
An inspector and cop turned novelist.
There's a trope for you.
Yeah, descended into the city sewer system to destroy the genetically engineered monstrosity that's murdering locals.
I'm rooting for that one.
I think I might
I'm
be
rooting
too.
for that one.
All right.
Or we're just going to leave it in the Wheel of Fate's hands.
Let's leave it in the Wheel of Fate's hands. And then if we don't feel strong, so Wheel of Fate, but Wheel of Fate with a provision. If we don't feel strongly about the Wheel of Fate's choice, then we'll go scared to death. How's that sound?
All right.
All right, so here we go. Let me make sure we're still recording down here. Yes, we are still recording. Okay, so Here is the Wheel of Fate. Okay, and I'm hoping everyone can see the Wheel of Fate. Yes, everyone can. I feel cheated. I've never had effervescent energy. You and me both. The poster from the vineyard, right? Yeah. All right.
You're just an old soul.
All right. So let's see. So here's what we're gonna do because we have been burned. I would also like to point out that apparently I spelled attic wrong. So
I would also like to point out that I noticed, and I let it go.
Don't look in the attic. Apparently, the attic.
Don't look at the English language.
Don't stare directly into the attic.
Okay, to be fair, I am a literature teacher. I am not a grammar Nazi. I still need my beta reader. So our proviso for the Wheel of Fate is if we don't like the results, we feel iffy about it, then we will just default to scared to death. So here we go, the Wheel of Fate. Yes! Oh, look at that! Oh my gosh!
That's terrible. You just missed a high five.
Oh, scared to death it is. All right.
I wonder if Kevin's like playing over with it. Like, I better stop it there or else I'm upset.
No, I didn't do it, man. That works. That worked out perfectly.
My son, I'm curious. Have you ever seen this one, Scared to Death?
Okay, so we're gonna just go right through here to Tubi. By the way, if anybody has not checked out Tubi yet, if you like cheap 80s horror, I highly recommend. Bring that creme brulee and that scorched brown sugar. That's going to be my next drink. I highly recommend Tubi. There's so much on there. All right, so we are going to watch Scared to Death. And what we'll do is I'm going to sign off the recording here. I am going to do a quick, before we start the movie, I am going to do a quick recording check because the last time we did this, I screen captured all of this stuff, and then somehow the next day, the audio did not get captured. And that was a little disappointing. We're going to sign off my my screen capture, and then we are going to start Scared to Death. Like I said, probably about half hour, 45 minutes into it, we will stop and give our initial impressions. Yeah, we'll give our initial impressions. And again, we'll make a lot of comments as we're watching. Again, I don't know if you'll be able to hear our comments because last time we did this with a lot of people, we found mixed results. It's whether or not they could hear our comments over the video. But feel free to roll through the chat. Yeah, Tom's movie sexy voice. All right, so let's start Scared to Death. All right, so we are currently, Mike, if you were there, Mike is back. Where'd Chuck go? He had to go out. Oh, okay. So Chuck was called away for domestic.
And I know Maria
to fill the dead air, here's the puppy. So we're about 23 minutes into this movie so far. Tom, what are your thoughts about the movie so far?
All right. Well, first of all, because it said 1980, but I think it was released in 81. Hi. You can kind of see it may have been not big budgeted. However, I think if they're trying, I think it's going to be a pretty good movie. One thing I kind of noticed is they're actually piggybacking off of the 1970s environmental horror movies that were out. Because they already mentioned, like, the opening was talking about the dangers of genetic engineering.
I will save this segue for halfway through.
Because Gremlins came out just a few years after, so it's the whole microwave. Be careful of microwaves.
Well, she blew them up in a microwave.
But that's the ending of Gremlins.
Yes, Marina, we agree. The shots are great. Yeah. Go ahead, keep going.
Anyway, so obviously this is making its way in there. I hate to say, like, late 70s and the early 80s, they were still kind of like, corporations are out to kill us. And this was before 84 when corporations are our friends and I'm a yuppie. So I like how they're a little political on this one.
Chuck, go ahead.
Very well done so far. It's interesting. You watch a monster movie from this time period, and it's got the same bones of the 50s and 60s monster movies. The production quality went up. I think there was still some rippling from things like Jaws and Alien that would take over, and of course you're about to get into a situation where Friday the 13th and Halloween start to just revolutionize. Yep. I think, but that's kind of working its way into horror. This is that point where the old style of horror is kind of in its last ropes with monster movies, and it's right before things like Aliens and Friday the 13th set the new standard for horror.
Right. I actually, it's funny you mentioned Aliens because I was looking at the monster creature effects and I was getting like a kind of like a xenomorph, xenomorph humanoids of the deep.
Yeah. I have a feeling that the monster design took some notes from Alien.
Oh, absolutely. One of the things we'll talk about our halfway point is some of the things that we've watched and reviewed. And I'll preface this by saying that I recently watched two great documentaries on Shudder called In Search of Darkness Part 1 and Part 2. And I'm eagerly awaiting In Search of Darkness Part 3, where it was really examining 80s horror. And what's great about 80s horror is, I love practical creature effects. And what I like about this movie so far is we haven't seen a lot of the creature. And I think that's a good thing. Marina, you would be having Cuba's overlay right now. He's currently chasing his tail in a circle right now. He's going to get that tail. We haven't seen a lot of the creature shots lately, which I think is a good thing. A lot of these 80s movies really played it pretty smart, where they were low budget. Maybe they weren't quite where they needed to be for special effects. But back then, you made a horror movie on a shoestring and a dream. You know what I mean? And some of the movies back then were really smart about not showing you. Marina, Shudder is amazing. Yeah, there's so many good things there. Tubi's really good too.
Get a VPN. You can watch it wherever.
Yeah. But yeah, I think this has got a good vibe to it. I think it's funny that we have the. He's a maniac cop to chase a maniac. Michael mentioned that trope as well. Yeah, and unfortunately, I think she's already falling in love with the guy just because she's offered a spec to. Now, that's one of the things I've noticed in watching these. I have really developed a sincere love for these 80s and 90s horror movies. But what comes with that is realizing that a lot of these movies are not terribly progressive. But that's okay. I'm very comfortable.
Pop rock.
Yeah. So, Michael, what are your thoughts on Scared to Death so far?
I'm liking it. It reminds me a little bit of Halloween, the 78 version, Halloween 1, in that the dialogue is really bad, but it doesn't matter. Exactly. Right. It almost reminds me of like the name of a rock group. Like it doesn't really matter what it is as long as it percussively and with the syntax, it's interesting. Like when I hear U2, I don't think, oh, what a clever play on you as well. And in Halloween, what Carpenter did so well is he has these babysitters saying the word totally 50 times, but all of the dialogue was a rhythmic build up to a partial sighting where they really hid the monster really well. You didn't really get a good look at Michael Myers at any time. And here they're doing the same thing with the alien creature. I like the fact that they're not showing him either. If they showed him, full force in a shot that lasted 7 seconds, we'd see that he's a puppet. I'm enjoying it, man. It's cool.
Do you have a favorite movie monster?
A favorite movie? Yeah, ironically.
Favorite movie monster. What's up there for you for monsters?
Oh, I prefer serial killers, but if I'm going to go with a monster, and it sounds like I'm kissing up to this movie, but I love Alien. And this seems like it's very similar.
Also, I would like to point out that Marina says the dialogue is awful with the hairs flawless. And look at this picture. Could this picture picture be any more 80s? Like, this picture is literally, even to the fridge in the background and the cupboard, it's like I grew up in that house, and that's what my mom looked like. It's like, this is the 80s right here.
Until she takes her glasses off.
She's got glasses,
Moves her hair.
therefore
Oh,
smart.
right. So the old, like, take the glasses off, and now suddenly we're hot.
Or she's just going to stay smart. If she just keeps wearing the glasses, you're smart.
That's true.
Yeah, hold on. The first woman that had the silk pajamas that everybody wanted, her hair looked just like Farrah Fawcett, man.
Yeah, I would know. We were talking about that when the movie started. Again, not terribly progressive, but it seems like it's not an 80 horrors movie until, and I'm saying this in full knowledge of Chuck's wife standing right behind us, that it's not an 80 horrors movie until there's an unnecessary boob shot.
Stealing the puppy.
An unnecessary boob shot. Like, just, and we'll talk about this halfway through, because a Barbara Crampton, who's kind of legendary in 80s horror movies, she said that in Search of Darkness, that the script would just be like, takes shirt off. And she'd be like, why am I walking around with my shirt off? Why are my boobs showing? Because it was the 80s. It wasn't an 80s horror movie. So you saw that. Again, not terribly progressive by any means. All right, so we're going to continue on and see what we've got next as the puppy is trying to maul me.
We'll do some deep dives in our next break into
Exactly.
fiction.
Yeah. All right, so Mike, if you want to join us again on a video, it's time for
Maybe out.
Yeah, no. It's. I gotta turn this off. I joined with my phone. Oh my God!
Oh, we had the audio loop going down.
Hold on.
Kevin,
Push the microphone.
You don't need to be on here.
All right, I think it's good now.
Yes. No, I joined with my phone so I could actually make comments from here instead of running to the computer.
And it pretended we have more viewers.
All right, so we're about halfway through the movie. Thank you for joining us. BLYNC. So thank you for joining us. So this is a part of the night where not only do we offer our recap of what was going on, and we kind of also offer some of the horror things that we've been looking at lately we've enjoyed. Are also our special guest tonight, Michael Aronovitz.
Let's start with Mike.
We've been doing all the time. So Michael is our special guest tonight. His new collection, Dancing with Tombstones, has been out in paperback for a while for some applications, but starting today it is on a special pre-order 99-cent special for like the next 2 weeks. So Michael, why don't you give us the pitch for your collection? Why is it we should buy it, and why should we buy it right now? Go ahead, sir.
Oh, wow, man, thank you. Well, it doesn't measure up to this film because this film is the best horror I've ever seen. But
he means that completely unironically as well.
Yeah, the collection's important to me because I've been writing the stories over 30 years. And I finally got a chance to make them all perfect and to modernize them. They're eclectic. I have dark psychological horror. I have ghost stories, werewolves, water beasts, zombies, the whole 9 yards. And each story comes from a different place. Each story has a different voice. And all of them were really fun to write. I've talked, Kevin, I've talked to you about this before. Writing short stories fits horror better, at least for me.
Right.
Because for a novel, it's hard as hell to keep the hallway scary for 325 pages. You have to bring in other genres. And I just feel that the short story is more made for horror writers.
Yep.
And this is my celebration of it. I mean, there are 17 stories. It would be difficult to give a synopsis or a nutshell of each one, but they were a lot of fun to write, man. And I tried to go to all parts of the genre, even in the dark corners.
I love hearing that. I like having a variety in the genre. I have read your short story, The Tool Shed. How does that?
Oh.
Yeah, which by the way, and I don't know if it's in the collection or not, but I will say Toolshed has some great prose, great imagery, and you've got a great sense of pace. You draw it out, and build the suspense and hold it there at a fine line. How does the Toolshed compare to the other stories in the collection, or the stories in the collection? I mean.
Yeah, I don't even remember the inspiration to write the tool shed, and that one's more recent. I wrote that in the last 5 years, and I ended up landing it. Van Helsing, right? The guy who wrote the Van Helsing stories is Jason Henderson, and he has a podcast called Castle of Horror, and then he started doing. He opened up his own small market book publishing company, and he put the tool shed in one of his books, Castle of Horror. When it comes to the pacing and the imagery, that one I was trying to go old school. I actually was trying to sound like Stephen King, and I try not to do that because usually if you try to sound like Stephen King, it just doesn't work. There's only one of them. But in that one, I went for an older feel. I like writing about kids because I've been a teacher for so many years. Kevin, what grade do you teach?
I teach 9 through 12.
Really? There's a big difference, man. Ninth grade is tough, and 11th grade doesn't want to talk to you.
That's right. 9th grade is insane. Seniors are done. Actually, my sweet spot is 10 honors. Because they're not 9th graders anymore, but they're not juniors. You get a lot done with 10 honors.
Yeah, you know what? I taught high school for 10 years, and I taught seniors, and like you said, they had a foot out the door. And I taught 10th grade, and 10th grade was the sweetest grade because they're just old enough where they care what you think of them, but they're just young enough where they want to try things that are new. And we used to do a short story unit in that class, and they really took that on. That's how I began the semester. I spent the first 4 weeks on a short story unit, and actually the gentleman who's sitting next to you asked me what my stories are about. A lot of them are about kids. The tool shed is about kids, young kids who are scared of their dad and scared of the tool shed in the backyard. The story in the collection that got the most traction was the one that opens the collection. It's called How Bria Died. And I worked in a charter school for 10 years in downtown Philadelphia. And the schools, it used to be an old factory. And the front door faces Broad Street, which is a main artery going through Center City, Philadelphia. But my room was in the back, and you got to it on the Buttonwood Street entrance, and there's a stairway that goes up. And the year before I got there, the room that I teach in used to be like this old thing that they just never renovated. There were dangling wires and exposed pipes and lots of boxes of dusty invoices and stuff like that. And when they cleared it out, I had the first room on the right, and I started telling a ghost story, just kind of taking it from nowhere, just to get people to behave, to talk about something interesting. And I made up a story about a girl in the school. It's a K through 12 who died up by the haunted alcove the year before they cleared it out, and I had that room. So I was telling a story about a ghost that haunted the room that I was teaching in, and I actually had a student named Leah. And you know how if you're leaning against the wall and somebody bumps the wall on the other side, if it's a thin wall, you can really feel it. Somebody bumped the wall right in the climax of my dumb story. She ran across the room screaming. And I mean, for me, that was great. And I just added some bullshit to the story every year. And when my first collection came out, S.T. Joshi shepherded it through Hippocampus because he has an interest editing there. And I needed another 2 stories, and he said, well, write something for me. And all I did was a frame story about a story about a teacher telling that story. And it took me a week, and he thought it was, really good. And for me, it was like, well, I've been writing this for years. And it ended up getting in Weird Tales. The only time I've ever had a story in Weird Tales. It ended up there, and then it opens my first collection called Seven Deadly Pleasures, and it opens Dancing with Tombstones as well. And actually, when I went and I redid and rehashed all the 17 best stories I was going to use, that one I touched the least. There's it's not very often. We're all writers here. You know that it's never perfect. That one is the closest one that I came to being perfect. I'll tell you this: I really like writing the Tool Shed. May I ask, where'd you get a hold of that?
I read the from the ebook, the collection you mentioned, the Castle or whatever collection.
Oh, so you read Jason Henderson's collection where it was?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Oh, what a weird coincidence. How really cool. Yeah, I really liked writing that because I always felt that the horror was in the blue collar work. Look at the movie we're watching right now, The Horror's in the Sewer.
Yeah.
You know, real people have to work down in the sewer. It's a real thing. And I always thought the tool shed, the basement, where the water boiler is, the serial killer is waiting behind the water boiler. Horror always happens in the technical places. So that was the inspiration for that story. I wanted a guy who just worshipped his tools and killed his wife.
By the way, you've been corrected. You were wrong about one comment. Marina says actually all the stories in the collection are perfect. So there's a correction there. I will say there's a bit of chat here going on. I'll give voice to what Marina's written. She says your writing flows so well in all of them, and each story has a subtle variation to the tone, which is nice. The characters are well developed, and the inner voices are so distinct. So a lot of praise coming from Marina on the collection.
Yeah, I mean, Marina, thank you, man. We're friends for life now.
She says you have one of her favorite lines ever written. She says that she loves the line, "I have a soul, but I loaned it to the church," which I will agree is also a wonderful line. That word "but" is powerful in that sentence.
Yeah, man. And Marina, thank you so much. It's the best review I ever got on my fiction. And the review itself is so well written and so well balanced. I mean, I'm a college professor, so the review is as important to me as the actual base text because I teach how to do the expository stuff as well. And my God, can she write? Oh my goodness. And the story she's talking about, I don't do a lot of devil stuff. And I'm not scared of it. That's not the point. It's just something that it's uncomfortable for me sometimes. And I will admit, the only movie that really scared me was The Exorcist. And I was young enough for it to be, I was impressionable. But there was something about that movie without computer-generated animation that they could. I still don't know how they did the spider walk down the stairs where she goes backward. And then at the end, she sticks her tongue out like Gene Simmons. But there's something about that kind of stuff that I just don't feel comfortable. And that's one of my oldest stories. It's called Quest for Sadness. It's about a real rich guy who doesn't really have emotions. And it's suggested to him that he's the devil. So he goes on a quest to have himself feel sadness. And the more he goes on this quest, the more he realizes that he doesn't. And the more it's exposed that he really is the devil. And you know what? I'm quoting the wrong story. The one you're talking about comes from a different one. I'm talking about Quest for Sadness. I thought he said it because the devil's story ain't about the soul in the church. Mm-hmm. What you just quoted is from the Matriarch. My fault. It's like I don't even know my own fiction. The Matriarch.
I get you on that one. I understand that.
Oh my goodness. You know what? I'm going to tell my family, my friends about this, that I failed a test on my own freaking fiction. Oh my God. Yeah, it was written in the Matriarch. I wrote a short story about a guy caught out on the highway in a rainstorm. And he has 2 flat tires and he has a dead body cut into 17 pieces in his trunk. And at the end of the story, a cop comes up to help him. and then I leave it right there. And in that one, the guy makes the comment about how I had a soul, but I loaned it to the church. And by the way, that line and that story ended up being the first pre-chapter of my third novel, Phantom Effect. So that serial killer ended up getting an extra life, man.
Right. Thank you for that. By the way, you just got a pre-order, so.
I did?
Yeah, I just pre-ordered it.
I thought it was somebody like watching the movie, like I got a secret admirer somewhere. I was like, yeah.
Nope, I just bought it.
Oh, thank you, man. Wow. I mean, that's really nice, man. I mean, you know, you're coming on this show and you made sure to read one of my stories. I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, so let's move into, before we start talking about movies so far, this is the part of the party where we start sharing some of the things that we've read or watched recently that we really liked. Why don't we start over with Tom? Tom, what have you read or watched recently in the horror genre that you really enjoyed that you would recommend? Not only to our current guests, but to our YouTube viewers later.
Well, as I said, I saw Antlers, and it was pretty good. I just kind of felt like COVID threw everyone for a loop, and it's like, oh, it's coming out, it's not coming out. Yeah. I like the fact that it was held in a depressed, I guess you call it a Rust Belt town, and how...
I think Pacific Northwest, if I'm right correctly?
Oh, yeah, I guess, yeah, Pacific Northwest. And not to mention, there's much more going on than just this monster out there.
Right,
how bad people's lives can get. I also saw the Silent Sea. Now, Kevin, don't get mad at me on this one because we talked about it. But yes, it was a Korean sci-fi horror. And I don't know the actor's name, but the the main character from Train to Busan was in it. And it was also, it was definitely an environmental movie because the water was drying up throughout the world and they were trying to find some substitute. So the Korean government sent a mission to a moon base they had on the moon that they lost contact with.
Sent a mission to a moon base on the moon. Go ahead, sorry.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Anyway, it was good. I mean, it's always claustrophobic around the moon itself. And I thought it worked out pretty well. I mean, it's definitely more sci-fi than horror, I think, but I think it works. So if you're into that, go for it.
So I will say, I mentioned at the opening, in the case people didn't catch that, I recently watched, I'm like 3 drinks in. Was it Finding Neverland or whatever, or Perfect Neverland? And I'll look you up the title right now. Anime Neverland. Promised Neverland, that's what it is. Promised Neverland, it's an anime. It's also a manga. I from what I hear, I've not read the manga, the comic book version of it. The seasons are all very good. I watched season 1 and a few episodes of season 2 that doesn't exist for Promised Neverland. Season 1 is great, and you could take it as a story on its own. There is a season 2 that kind of summarizes multiple story arcs from the manga, and people have just universally panned it. I will say this: the writers for the anime took their name off the writing credits for the last couple episodes of season 2, which kind of shows you, there were some things that just got messed up. But season 1 itself is a good standalone story and wonderfully done. And Mike mentioned he loves writing, stories with children in it. This is in that same vein with children in a growing up in an orphanage and thinking they're going off to loving homes, and then watching their members depart one by one, and then finding out the real horror of where they're actually destined to go. And I don't want to say more than that because that would be a spoiler. But it's a very the children there are in this part of the plot are brilliant. They're bred and raised to be brilliant minds. So you get this really cool cat and mouse game between the children in the orphanage versus the mother who's part of the plot that's going on. So it's kind of cool there. As for fiction, I've not yet finished, but from what I've read, I can recommend it. The Ballad of Black Tom. I'm reading that right now. It's so good. It's wonderful.
Oh, The Ballad of Black Tom by Victor LaValle. So good.
finishing it up now. So I have not finished it yet, but I will say I don't expect to be disappointed.
No, you won't.
It's wonderful.
My seniors read that this year for our my 12th English class. Read that for our horror and race unit, and there was a really good reaction to that. So for me, and I'll try to keep this brief because we all know how much I like to
Talk.
be long-winded.
We're gonna save some time for Mike, who also we said before he didn't come inside. We have to know what's on his bookshelf.
Okay, so I really enjoyed the documentaries on Shudder, in Search of Darkness 1 and 2, and there's a third one coming out. I really discovered this kind of late in life, this love for 80s horror. I have to clarify, why didn't I watch 80s horror when I was a kid? Two reasons. One, I was raised in a moderately strict evangelical Christian home. So because of that in the 80s during the Satanic Panic, obviously horror was like, oh, you watch horror, you're going to hell. But also, too, just as an individual, I was more of a sci-fi fan. Like, I discovered Isaac Asimov in the Foundation series in high school. So I just really wasn't interested in horror at the time in the 80s when it was happening. But now I'm kind of sad about that. Because what I've decided is that VHS era of 80s horror is not something that can be replicated. There was just something about it where even if you had the most low-budget production, you still had access to professional video equipment, and it was just like Blue Gilead, who is the site manager of Cemetery Dance, said it best. What was it? 80s horror was a hard rock party, and everyone was it just really, so In Search of Darkness, Part 1 and Part 2 on Shudder was awesome because it examined, it still boggles my mind how many horror movies were made during that period. I
think also with that, you mentioned, how it can't be replicated. I think it gets into expectations have shifted. We've seen some high budget, high CG stuff and special effects, and so I think it kind of just ruined expectations. I think people are just always waiting for that.
I'm not sure if that's it exactly. Again, here's my off-the-cuff theory. So today, with all the streaming services, any yokel, and I say that I don't, because I have a lot of friends who are independent filmmakers, so I don't mean them, but any yokel can grab a DV camera, go out and film something, put it into like a video editor that you can buy for whatever, and then edit a movie, then upload it, and then get it on Vudu or get it on YouTube or whatever. In the 80s, you still had to have access to at least professional video equipment. Mm-hmm. There were some horror movies that were shot on VHS video, but really in the 80s, you still had to have that. You had to have a professional editing equipment. Even if all your actors are the worst actors ever, you still have, like, for example, there's a wonderful movie, so low budget, I recommend it to anyone, called Night Vision. And I actually had the opportunity I hunted up the main protagonist of that movie, who now just does freelance voice work. And we had a little dialogue. And that movie is cheesy. So none of those actors, Night Vision, it's on Tubi. None of those actors went on to a career. But because you had to have at least access to professional video equipment, it has something to it that some guy with a DV camera and then uploading it to Amazon Prime won't have.
Yep.
But anyway, so that was really great. I also recently finished Archive 81 on Netflix. Highly recommend it. Really, really great film. Hopefully there's going to be a season 2. Kind of a combination of found footage, occult, demonology. It was really good. I was also really impressed with our lead character is a black man, and our lead female is I looked it up. She's one of the very first Saudi Arabian, European actresses who gets a lead role. Yes, that's what I've heard also as well, Marina, is the podcast series is not exactly the same. but I've heard the podcast series is excellent. So I highly recommend Archive 81. Midnight Mass. We almost could do an entire broadcast on Midnight Mass.
We have to hold that. I want to do one thing, which Marina mentioned The Last Days of Jack Sparks is an incredible novel, so we'll throw that as a shout out. The Last Days of Jack Sparks. And I will also cede the floor to Mike real quick. Are there any books you've read recently that you highly recommend? Or collections?
I'm sorry, that was to me?
Yep, yeah. So are there any novels or story collections you've read recently that you enjoy that you recommend?
Yeah, not a novel. It's a collection of novellas. October Nights by Kevin. I'm not playing. It's really good. And that's the
yeah. He's right there. He can hear you though. He's right there. But yeah, you got a big laugh out of Kevin. But yeah, no. We tease Kevin. He's a good writer.
No, literally, man. That's the last book I read. It's sitting right over here. I can show you the cover, man. But you guys were talking about like what's the last horror movie you saw, and I'm not going to let that go. I got to add to that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the movie didn't just come out. I think it came out in 2016, but I hadn't seen it, and I had heard about it. And you have to understand, I'm usually not a night person. I go hard from 4:30 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon. Then it's Miller time. But there were 2 days in the last year that I stopped at 2 o'clock to do something for me. You know what I mean? Just for pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to see Terrifier, because I had heard about it.
Terrifier.
I like scary clown movies.
Uh-huh.
And on my Facebook, David Howard Thornton was a friend already. And look, that movie has a lot of problems. It has a lot of logic errors, especially where there's access to this weird fucking apartment building. But the performance of David Howard Thornton is amazing. I don't know if you're familiar with the film, but the first about 25 minutes up through the hacksaw scene are just priceless. The pizza shop scene is so well shot. If you listen to the soundtrack, just when he makes the camera cuts to the faces that the clown is making, and then the girl being very uncomfortable, and then back to a face, and the whole 9 yards, the use of the soundtrack is very subtle, but it's perfect. And boy, what a good movie. And he made that, what's his name, Damien Leone or something like that.
Yep.
He made the movie. It relates to this to purposely be a throwback to 80s horror.
Yeah, I definitely had that feel when I watched that movie. Yeah, absolutely.
I saw an interview with him, and there was a little bit of computer generated animation, but it was like when a shadow didn't work, they filled it in differently. All of the special effects are done by hand, like by puppets and stuff like that. And I'm telling you right now, that hacksaw scene, that's beautiful. And even before he uses the hacksaw, what he's doing with the other girl, when he fakes that he's going to hit her with the hammer, and then he fakes it again, and then he brings up the hacksaw, and he, like, she's moving her head, and he looks like he's playing whack-a-mole at the carnival, trying to get a hold of her hair, then exposes that beautiful throat. I mean, what a beautiful shot that is. And then the blade comes up against it. I mean, it was just so much fun, that movie, man.
Yeah,
have you guys seen it?
You know, some things there's some logistical issues or whatever with the story and stuff. I'm trying to remember who it was. I actually had a conversation with someone who's worked on some scripts and worked in some Hollywood projects, and they said you have to understand that a lot of the directors kind of underestimate the importance of story, and they kind of get a little too big for their britches. And so what they see is like, yeah, the story's there, I know what I'm doing, and they kind of just move forward. They tend to miss that nuance. So he says that a lot of directors and producers underestimate the value of the screenwriters that they have on hand, who usually catch these things. When these silly things come up in a script, you probably have a screenwriter kind of just going along as best they can and smiling, knowing that there's those two that are there, but the directors kind of forge ahead and undervalue them a little bit.
Yeah, and that's one thing that's kind of cool about horror. We forgive that, don't we?
Yeah.
Because we like to see the trees close up as well. The faraway view isn't as important in movies, at least, than the shot, right? The composition of the shot, the shadows, the jump scare, the whole 9 yards, and that's kind of cool.
Yep. There's so many elements that come together. There's so much. I mean, the writer's there, but that's just one part of the art. That's the cool thing with movies is that there's different artists all working together to make something.
Absolutely. And the horror genre is just beautiful.
Great quote. Yeah, we're going to put this quote. As King has said, we can forgive anything except feeling bored.
Right.
So you know what I think we ought to do? We ought to hold off on our Midnight Mass.
Till
We
the
have
end.
a lot to say about that. Maybe for our next show.
Next show? Okay.
Yeah, maybe for our next show, it's not bothering anyone.
Okay, we'll just give a little snippet. We won't go into detail next time.
Yeah.
But I'll just say we've been kind of waiting to watch Midnight Mass or talk about it. It's so well done. It's classic Mike Flanagan. He really found himself, I think, on Netflix, and that's something I've talked on before. I think I've seen some of his movies before, and he filled the role of making the kind of movies that the production companies wanted. But I get the sense that in Netflix, with a longer format, it's the kind of stories he wants to tell.
Yeah.
And in Midnight Mass was brilliant. Someone who's come out of and still is in part of a religious environment. It's really well done. It's fair. I would say there's very few horror properties I think have done a kind of a fair job of either showing the good or the bad of religion, and I think he did a wonderful job of balancing it and showing multiple sides of that environment.
So I will say this is the only thing I'm going to say about Midnight Mass. So again, wonderful, although I will say it's been...
Watch it, so we'll say this, watch it, and then the next time we get together for Into the Best, we'll have a discussion. So
there's been a little bit of a polarizing reaction to it, because some people didn't like the exposition and things like that, but that's kind of like that... I once remember reading something about this when they were talking about Rod Serling and his dialogue in The Twilight Zone, in that nobody really speaks like that. Mm-hmm. But, oh, God, it's so wonderful to listen to. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So, yeah, the exposition... If the exposition in Midnight Mass, nobody actually ever talks like that. But I'm sorry. I was, locked in. Mm-hmm. So here's the interesting thing about this. I don't know if this is going to blow your mind. Probably 5 years ago, he did a movie called Hush on Netflix. Yep. The main character is the same actress who I think is his wife.
Yeah, I looked it up. I'm like, oh, he's worked a lot with her. Oh,
so
they're married.
Get this. In the movie Hush, the main character is a deaf author, played by this character. Mm-hmm. This movie is done 5 years before Midnight Mass. This author's novel is named Midnight Mass. Mm-hmm. And the main characters are Father Paul, Aaron, and Riley. Before he ever did the Midnight Mass series.
He finally got the chance to do what he wanted.
I'm just like, yeah, exactly. Yes, Katie Seagal. Yes, that's exactly the reaction we're talking about. Like I'm watching Hush. And she's typing through this scene, and she mentions Father Paul, Riley, and Aaron. And I'm just like, and the novel's called Midnight Mass. And I'm like, boom. Wow. I've always appreciated that kind of was he thinking about Midnight Mass as he made Hush? Or was that a throwaway thing? But then when he decided to develop Midnight Mass, he's like, this would be a cool tie-in. I've always loved that sort of stuff.
I get the feeling that I have to look it up. I have a feeling that Midnight Mass was the passion project he's been wanting to do for a while.
Oh yeah, very personal. I think it's time to dive. Also, too, Marina mentioned. I thought the other still that we paused on was peak 80s. I was wrong.
This is peak 80s.
This still right here with the skating and the knees has This is the
Are they
80s.
sexy short shorts or mom shorts?
Yeah, I don't know, but it doesn't matter.
Were sexy short shorts that became mom shorts because they became moms. Now, before we go on, we have to ask one question.
You guys know I have an hour to be on the
Oh yeah.
on the road.
All right, we'll get back into it, but we always have to say,
You're here.
Mike, what's on your bookshelf behind you? Because Marina asked before, and I know you typed the comments, but what do you have on your bookshelf behind you?
Yeah, my messy bookshelf, man.
Yeah.
The front half
Oh.
are all my books. They're anything that I have in print that I've done.
Mhm.
And then, I write rock reviews and stuff like that. So from the middle to the back are artists that I've dealt with, and they've given me little doodads and knickknacks. And the books behind it are my school books for teaching college.
Nice. All right. Very cool.
All right, let us get back into Scared to Death.
So we just finished watching Scared to Death.
Are you scared to death?
Where's Mike? Mike has not joined us. Where is he?
I'm going to fall asleep.
That's understandable. Marina had fun. Marina, we had fun too.
Marina is...
We're teasing, but we had fun. Oh, Mike says
Okay.
camera's slow.
Marina is now has to be a staple member of the Into the Abyss Cemetery Dance movie.
Honestly,
Lounge.
Marina, your commentary is better than anything we can give, so we see the
That
floor
has
to
gotta
you.
be, yeah, that's gotta be like a staple now from now on.
Marina, we're not worthy.
All right, so we're gonna give Michael time. There he is.
There's Mike. All right, Mike, thanks for watching this movie with us. Masterpiece.
I mean, on our end, the whiskey certainly helped. Tom.
Well, let's see the floor to Mike first.
Yeah.
Mike,
Yes, Mike, you're a special guest. What are your thoughts of Scared to Death?
Oh, finally, I got the controls on this thing, man.
All right, we hear you. Oh, wait, it went quiet. Wait, it cut off.
I think you're on mute.
No, I think the audio just died. Oh no! All right, well, Mike's coming back on. Tom, real quick, your thoughts while we're waiting for Mike, because he's getting his camera coming back on.
It was definitely a 70s to 80s horror movie. It was definitely low budget.
Yep.
It sucked. I'm sorry. I'm not going to pretend I liked it.
But still better than Robert and the Toy Maker.
Kevin, a fresh pile of dog shit's better than Robert and the Toy Maker.
Oh, yeah, here, Mike. Mike, give it another try.
Yeah, man, it was a good schlocky movie, man.
Yeah.
I mean, yes,
There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, the monster was kind of cool. I wish he could have gotten braces.
Yeah.
You know, his teeth were a little bit funny, but that was cool.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of
over the people. Like, I really hope these two die.
Yeah, I mean, it's got the old horror problem. It's hard to care about the characters when the monster's the most important thing.
Yeah. Yes. It didn't help that they made the main character into basically a cardboard cutout of a hero.
Yeah. Yeah, and the lines weren't delivered really effectively. I mean, they tried.
Yep.
They tried. It was a definite low-budget 80s horror movie, man. Nothing wrong with that.
But hey, it's a great movie to watch when you got some friends and some booze.
You know what? I noticed that. Horror movies, at least. That's why it's hard to write horror books, because the books tend to be a little more literary, and you miss, when you read, you're alone, and you miss the idea of people gathered around with their popcorn or their booze and watching a movie, man.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have to come over. I just have to sit on your lap and as you read a book, and we'll just read books together.
Right.
As we're all offering our reviews, I am going to be shamelessly promoting everyone involved in this. So continue, please, while I do that.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit before about your collection, Mike. But is there any stories that kind of stand out to you that it comes from a really strong memory, or it comes from a strong inspiration?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I don't know where the inspiration comes from, but when I think of the stories, the one that's the most different in the collection, I tried a science fiction story. It's in the same section that the tool shed is in, tools and tech. And I wrote about, it's called Soul Text. And it's about two inventions in the near future, kind of like Black Mirror. You know how Black
Yeah.
Mirror is like 30 years ahead of us in tech, and then they kind of show what goes around it. In this one, like when I was teaching high school, most kids were worried that they didn't have a charger. That was the biggest thing. They'd come into the class, interrupt it, and say, "Anybody got a charger?" And also, we're getting smaller. It used to be all movies and TV, and then it's phones. And the invention in my story is called the thumb screen, and you get an ocular device, and the thumb screen is implanted, at birth, and then you get a replacement as you get older, and it's powered by human neurons, and you flip the pages by winking your eye. And the social media platform that replaces Facebook and Twitter is called Soul Text, and that's where if you exchange PIN numbers, you can be inside the other person's mind for 5 minutes, and by the end of it, people are told by the government to lock themselves away in their houses because they can't shut it off.
Very cool.
And
Very cool.
yeah, and I don't even know if I gave a really good synopsis of it. It's more the kind of thing you got to read moment from. Isn't that the funny thing about all of it, though? I mean, all of the plots are sort of the same. You have different twists and et cetera, but it's really the moment for moment that counts, isn't it?
Yeah. And people will know that when they get your book for 99 cents on pre-order. Right now.
Oh, that's what I'm talking about, man. Thank you.
All right. But Kevin, your thoughts on the movie?
It was fun. It was. I think Marina hit it on the head. Is that so? I can't remember. Okay, so every year my sophomores, I give them a horror unit, and there's a wonderful essay on Tor.com called by Greg Ruth called "Why Horror is Good for You and Even Better for Your Kids."
Mm-hmm.
And one of the points is the community aspect, the bonding, that you've watched this together, and you've had a communal response to it. When I used to show horror movies every year, yeah, exactly.
International bonding.
When I used to show horror movies every year to my classes, when I was a younger teacher, I would be very like, "Oh, shh, be quiet, watch the movie." But what I realized over the years, as I let my classes watch these horror movies, I realized that their reactions to the movie were not disrespectful or they were being loud or things like that. So for example, my sophomore honors class every year, at the end of the horror unit, we watch The Woman in Black with Daniel Radcliffe. And what I've realized over the year is their reactions, even their verbal reactions to that movie, is literally that communal aspect being played out in front of me in my class in real time. And watching them react to, "Oh, look at that," or they're like, "Oh," things like that. And I think what Marina said was really perfect. Scared to death, not necessarily a movie you would watch by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Be like, "Oh my gosh, this is the epitome of artistic horror." But this is that movie that you watch with friends. You're like, "Oh my God, this is amazing," because you're with your friends. We have the
And then the next time you're with your friends walking through a dark alley, you're like, hey, remember when we watched Scared to Death?
Exactly right, yes. So that was the point of the Greg Ruth article. And if you just Google why horror is good for you and even better for you kids by Greg Ruth, you'll find the article on Tor.com. And that was the exact point, is there's this bonding when you come out of a horror movie, you're like, oh my gosh. And you're always referencing that horror movie, like, oh, this is just like when we watched this. And that was what was great about this movie, is Scared to Death. Is, we're watching it, we're commenting on the 80s, we're commenting on the hairstyles and things like that. And it's a communal experience. I will say this: it was interesting to me throughout the whole movie that we actually didn't see a whole lot of the monster. Mm-hmm. And again, you're wondering about that 80s aesthetic. Did they know that? So in Dance Macabre, Stephen King talks about, he makes a reference to those really schlocky movies he grew up on. And as long as you don't show the zipper down the back of the costume, then you've got the audience. And that's what I've noticed about a lot of 80s horror movies. Yeah, the paradox of the closed door. Once you open it, are we going to be disappointed by what we see? So I think it was pretty cool in this movie that we didn't see a whole lot of the movie, because, maybe I'm totally guessing here, but maybe the directors are like, look, this is what we got for our special effects. If we show too much of it, people are going to be like, oh, look at that, whatever.
The price tag on that.
Right. We don't want to show the zipper.
We didn't buy it.
We don't want to show the zipper down the back. We don't want to show the price tag. So I thought that was interesting in itself. And of course, genetic experiments gone awry. I have something I want to add based on what you said later. I'm going to wait, though, until everyone else has had their say. Chuck, have you chimed in?
I have not. There's definitely some things that could have been improved that don't necessarily make the movie better. More schlocky, yes. Some of the long, extremely drawn-out cuts, shots could have been short.
Oh, my God.
There were some bad ones. The hero was literally, I was commenting on this, the movie is an hour and 36 minutes with credits, and the inciting incident, the motivation for the hero to get involved, doesn't happen until an hour in of a 90-minute movie. There's some story issues that are going on here. There's some hero issues that are going on that can be done better, but it was fun. And I harken back to, I was a big fan of Mystery Science Theater 3000, I still am. They make jokes, but the people who write for MST3K have always said, we're not there to mock the movies. They're fun in their own right. We can make jokes and we can have fun with the movie, but we're not there to tease the creators of the movie, even if we see some silly things. And that's my perspective on this movie. This movie is actually, I'm going to look. I want to see if this has ever been done on MST3K or Riff Tracks, where they made commentary on it, because it's a perfect one with lots of long, quiet scenes. You have lots of room for jokes. But that said, it was a fun movie, and I appreciate the art of it. Even though it's silly, there's still a lot of artistry that went into it. We love the cinematography. There's still some great aspects of it and some fun that went into it, and we had a good time.
No, I extend my piece. I'm done. I yield the floor.
All right, so I just have to.
The outfits were great, Bert.
I have to. So Tom, at some point, I can't remember if it was in the.
I need to stop speaking.
This is the time right after all the drinks where things just get slower. So, Mike, this is where everything just slows down.
So one thing you should know, if you go visit Into the Abyss, and I think I already shared the link for Into the Abyss, and I'll share it again here in a minute. The later that it gets in the night, the more philosophical. The more philosophical I get.
You can tell how late it is based on how slow we talk.
Yeah. So Tom had talked about earlier about environmental and 80s movies, things like that, and it brings up two movies that I want to recommend on the side. One is actually a really good movie called The Stuff. I don't know if everyone has ever seen this stuff.
I have heard of it.
Oh, so you have to see The Stuff. The Stuff is actually really well done. The Stuff is a movie about but it's got that 80s component.
Mike, have you seen it? The Stuff.
No.
Oh, okay. It's on Tubi. You have to watch it. Tubi. So in The Stuff, randomly, in this small town, this white ice cream-like substance is found bubbling up from the ground. What do we do?
Like a blob.
What do? We eat it, as you do.
Yeah.
It turns out the stuff is this addictive. It tastes even better than ice cream. What does corporate America do? Corporate America commoditizes the stuff and starts marketing it as the best tasting ice cream and yogurt alternative you can possibly eat. So it becomes this big corporate machine.
And it's vegan.
Yeah, and everyone's fridges is full of this stuff. There's sexy commercials of like models going, we only eat the stuff. And everyone eats the stuff. Of course, what is the stuff really? It's a semi-sentient alien organism that's bent on global domination. The more you consume the stuff, turns you into a puppet. But really, when you watch it, it becomes the perfect foil to Reaganomics, to the excess of the 80s, to where the corporate people who are running the stuff, obviously they've never eaten the stuff themselves. Mm-hmm. They're only in charge of this corporate machine, getting as many people to buy the stuff as possible, not caring. And the ultimate point of at the end of the movie is when our hero finally dismantles everything. At gunpoint, he forces the CEOs to sit there and start eating this stuff so they can finally be addicted to the thing they're addicting thousands of people to. That is a perfect example of 80s horror at its pinnacle. It's actually really well done, but it's got that schlocky element. But then you're looking at the subtext here, and the subtext is 80s horror greedy.
Yep.
Here's the lowest common denominator, also on Suckling, or also on Tubi.
On
Suckling. Sorry, that's the name of the movie.
The lowest common denominator
on Tubi, there's a movie called The Suckling. Bear with me. It takes place in a brothel / illegal abortion clinic. Mm-hmm. You know, so one-stop shopping, right? You go to a brothel, you can also get an abortion. So this girl gets shanghaied by her boyfriend because she's pregnant, takes him to this whatever, and he gives her, she wants to keep the baby, he doesn't. He gives her a Mickey, so she passes out. And
hey, Mickey, you're so fine.
They perform an abortion. Then this movie couldn't even be made today. I would like to think I'm a fairly progressive guy, but this movie could not be made today. They flush the fetus down the toilet. Randomly, because it's the 80s, there's radioactive waste down there.
There's a book about this.
The radioactive waste drips on the flushed fetus and mutates it into this monster. It is now
Teenage Mutant Ninja Fetus. Teenage Mutant Ninja Fetus.
It's now going to take vengeance on this entire abortion clinic / brothel. I'm like,
Heroes with umbilical cord.
I'm watching this movie going, how was this made? And it's so stereotypical. It's so stereotypical because the only black character in the movie is the bouncer of the brothel, who also has nebulous military background, who gets killed about halfway through the movie. And so, but even then, it's really ham-fisted. It's really terrible. If you are easily offended, please don't watch this movie. But in the 80s, here's this really bad movie that's grappling with this concept of, a back alley abortions and things like that. And of course, it gets irradiated by nuclear waste. As you do. And I'm watching this movie going, oh my God. And I did do a mini review of this on our YouTube channel. But that's all I could think of when you were talking about these 80s movies that were trying to be socially conscious about waste. And that's why, again, Blue Gillian is the site editor of CemeteryDance.com. And he once made the statement that 80s horror was a rock and roll party that everyone was invited to. And it was just, and that's what this movie,
We should end with some smart words, not from us, because it's hard even when it's over. But Mike, so send us off here. Kind of this commentary there. You mentioned, which is a good insight, that with literary horror, with fiction, it's very much a personal, individual thing versus the cinema. You've got that kind of that party atmosphere, that group atmosphere. Is that a good thing, or do you see it? Is there a way to kind of bring in some of that fun atmosphere, or is it just okay being that there's kind of this distinct world of cinema horror is different than literary horror?
Yeah, the send-off is, I think they're different. I think each can have aspects of the other, but I definitely think that literary horror, like Kevin writes, like I do, and I don't claim to be overly metaphorical and really literary. I don't write about a cow sniffing at a manure pile with a microwave oven on top of it and call it Marxism. But there's something about the book that there's an aspect of being the 14-year-old, but you see it more in the movies than you do in the literary horror. So there's a separation, but that's why I like the movies so much.
Yep.
You know what I mean? They're an entity on their own, and they're just great.
Awesome. Yep. And Marina said there's nothing more deep and beautiful than The Soldier. That story is amazing. So some more praise for Marina. I think you have a fan of Marina for life.
Anyway, for all of our YouTube viewers who will be watching this video later on this week.
The important thing is when you're watching these videos, you got to tone down the intellect, to take off the glasses and watch the video. And then when you want to be smart, you read Mike's book and put on the glasses.
I was actually just going to tip all of our stuff on Amazon.
Go ahead and tip.
So, first of all, Mike Aronovitz, Dancing with Tombstones. It's on a special 99-cent pre-order for the next couple weeks. So please go order that. C.W. Breyer, Wrath and Ruin is his short story collection.
Upcoming with Sticks and Stones.
Excellent short stories collection. What was the novel again?
Whispers from the Depths.
Whispers from the Depths. Vengeful Water Spirits and Vikings. So by that,
the doggies are locked away. They're with my wife. They're going down for sleep. So these doggies are asleep. If you want to see the doggies, go back to the beginning of the video.
Yeah. So also, C.W. Breyer's got an upcoming short story collection, Sticks and Stones. You want to check that out here very soon. And my most recent book was October Nights, a novella quartet about Halloween. Liminal Spaces was my first outing as an editor for Cemetery Gates Media, so I highly recommend that. Anyway, thank you for everyone for joining us.
Thank you to Mike for joining us.
Yes, Mike, thank you for our guest. Thank you, Marina. Kat was here. She left us. And then SYNNYC, thank you for joining us as well.
99 cents, Mike's book right now.
Exactly, yes. And I don't know, I haven't confirmed this, but I can tell you this. My thoughts for our next guest is going to be Bob Ford.
You haven't even asked him yet.
I already asked him on Messenger.
Okay.
Yes,
okay.
I really want Bob Ford.
I was worried that was like a drunken. I'm gonna get Bob Ford.
No, I already messaged us. I want to ask Bob Ford to come join us and talk about his wonderful novel, Burner. Mm-hmm. But anyway, until then, keep an eye on both the Cemetery Dance Facebook and Twitter, and my Facebook and Twitter, and we will meet again in yet another month.
Eat, drink, and be scary.
Eat, drink, and be scary.
Thank you so much, Mike, for joining us.
Thank you.
And congrats.
Yeah,
on the
thank you,
book
man.
release.